I had a dream about the street I grew up on, and that should have been the first warning. It was one of those dreams that sticks to you. A heavy, unsettling feeling you can't quite shake off. The next morning, I felt this strange pull, this undeniable urge to go back. It had been decades, but the memory was suddenly so sharp, so insistent. I figured, why not? A quick trip down memory lane. I typed the address into my phone, but something was wrong. Google Maps couldn't find it. The street just wasn't there. It kept trying to reroute me, suggesting other streets, other towns, as if the place I remembered so vividly had been erased from the world. I didn't let that stop me. I knew the general area, the landmarks, the old water tower I used to see from my bedroom window. So I drove, relying on a mental map that was 20 years old. I felt a weird mix of frustration and excitement. It was like a puzzle. The closer I got, the more the GPS malfunctioned, the screen glitching and freezing. Finally, after what felt like hours of circling the same few blocks, I saw it. Tucked away behind a row of overgrown pine trees was an unmarked turnoff. A crack in the world I'd almost missed. A cold, heavy feeling settled in my stomach as I turned the wheel. The street was there, but it was wrong. Terribly wrong. It was like looking at a distorted photograph of a familiar face. The houses, my childhood home included, were all there, but they were sick. They leaned inward. Their structures warped and twisted as if the very ground was trying to swallow them. The paint was peeling in long, ugly strips. And the windows were dark, vacant eyes staring out into nothing. The streetlights flickered with a weak, dying pulse, casting long, skeletal shadows that danced and riffed on the cracked pavement. It was unnervingly quiet. No birds, no distant traffic, just a low, oppressive silence that pressed in on me from all sides. And then I saw them. People. Standing on their porches. They were perfectly still, like forgotten statues left out in the rain. I slowed the car to a crawl, my heart hammering against my ribs. Their skin was a sickly, ashen gray, and their clothes were dated, faded from a time I could just barely recall. Their mouths all hung open just slightly, as if they were in the middle of a silent, collective gasp. They weren't looking at me, not directly. Their gazes were fixed on something far away, something I couldn't see. The air grew colder, and a fog, thin and wispy, began to snake its way along the curves. I wanted to turn around, to floor it and get out of there, but I was frozen, mesmerized by the horror of it all. My eyes scanned the line of silent figures, and then they locked onto one. My breath caught in my throat. I recognized him. It was Mr. Abernathy. He used to live to houses down. He was the one who always had a kind word. The one who'd toss a ball back over the fence when it landed in his prize-winning rose bushes. But this wasn't the Mr. Abernathy I remembered. This was a hollowed-out version, a shell. He was wearing the same old cardigan he always wore, the one with the leather patches on the elbows. As if he could feel my gaze, his head slowly, mechanically turned towards my car. A smile stretched across his face, but it wasn't a smile of warmth or recognition. It was a grotesque, unnatural grimace. I heard a sound, a dry, cracking noise like old wood splitting. And I realized it was the sound of his jaw moving. The smile widened, pulling the gray skin of his cheeks taut, revealing teeth that were too long, too sharp. A wave of pure, primal fear washed over me. This wasn't a memory. This was a nightmare made real. I slammed my foot on the gas, the tires squealing in protest. I had to get to the end of the street. It wasn't that long, maybe a quarter of a mile. As I sped past the houses, I could feel their eyes on me. They didn't move a muscle. but I could feel their collective gaze following my car, a heavy, malevolent weight. I didn't dare look at their faces again. I just stared straight ahead, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, focusing on the stop sign at the end of the road, the gateway back to the real world. The engine roared, the houses becoming a blurry, distorted mess in my peripheral vision. I reached the end of the street, where it was supposed to intersect with the main road. But the intersection was gone. The street just ended. A solid wall of impenetrable, ancient-looking trees stood where the road should have been. There was no stop sign. No way out. Panic clawed its way up my throat. I slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a halt just inches from the dark woods. It was a dead end. But it wasn't a dead end before. I knew this street like the back of my hand. It connected. It always connected. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely keep them on the wheel. I had no choice but to turn around. I put the car in reverse, my eyes darting to the rearview mirror. And that's when the terror became absolute. The street behind me was longer now. Much longer. The houses stretched back into the foggy distance, seeming to multiply as I watched. The beginning of the street, the turnoff I had taken, was no longer visible. It was just an endless, repeating pattern of decaying homes and flickering, dying lights. I was trapped. I spun the car around, the tires kicking up gravel. I had to go back the way I came, even if it seemed impossible. As I started driving back down the impossibly long road, I heard it. A new sound cutting through the silence. It was the sound of footsteps. A slow, dragging shuffle coming from behind my car. I glanced in the rearview mirror again. The figures were no longer on their porches. They were in the street, shambling, their gray forms moving with a horrifying, jerky gait. They were following me. And they were getting closer. Then came the whisper. It wasn't in my ear. It was everywhere at once. Inside my head, slithering through the air in the car. A dry, raspy voice, like dead leaves skittering across pavement. It said, "Don't remember to hard." The words chilled me to the bone. What did that mean? I pushed the accelerator to the floor, the engine screaming. The dragging footsteps got faster. The whispers louder, a chorus of voices now, all murmuring the same warning. I saw my childhood home approaching, the porch empty. And then I saw the front door swing open. I don't know how I escaped. The memory is a blur of panic and adrenaline. One moment, I was on that nightmarish, stretching road, and the next, my tires hit smooth, normal asphalt. I was back on the main road, the sun blindingly bright. The turnoff was gone. I pulled over, my body trembling, gasping for air. I checked my phone. The map was working perfectly. There was no record of the street, no trace it had ever existed. It was as if I'd driven through a ghost. I drove home in a daze, trying to convince myself it was a hallucination. Waking nightmare brought on by a lack of sleep and a vivid dream. But something changed in me that day. The world feels thinner now. And there's something else. Something terrifying. I can't remember faces anymore. When I try to picture my friends, my family, even my own reflection in the mirror, the details are blurry, indistinct. It's all a vague shape, a smudge where a face should be. All I can see, all I can remember with perfect, horrifying clarity are their teeth. Only teeth.